Everyone, welcome to our webinar today, our award ceremony for our Science Communication Award, From Research to Real Impact. This is a celebration of science communication. We're so glad that everyone is joining us here today. Our aim today is that you learn from professional science communicators and also hear some fantastic science talks from the finalists of our second annual Science Communication Award. We are recording this webinar, and we ask that if you're here in the audience listening, to keep your microphones off during the presentations. And of course, you're welcome to drop any questions, comments, thoughts in the chat, and we'll try to answer those questions. So this is our agenda for today. We have two invited speakers who are experts with science communication. And then we'll move into our Science Communication Award program. Judy will speak and share a bit more about the Science Communication Award. And then we have our five finalists giving short 3-minute talks. And then this year, we've introduced a People's Choice Award, where you in the audience can listen to the 5 talks and decide which one was most compelling for you. And then we will have our award presentation where we announce the runner-up and the winner of this year's Science Communication Award. And now I'd like to introduce our first invited speaker, Hedwig Ens, a professional science communicator. Hedwig is a versatile science communicator dedicated to making science open and accessible through the power of stories. After working as an evolutionary ecologist, she turned to the world of science publishing, making sure that children have intellectual access to the latest science. And as a public speaking trainer, Hedwig fosters a safe space for researchers to collaborate, and with the help of applied improvisational theater techniques, discover the stories within their science. Welcome, Hedwig.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you so much for the invitation to come over and share some of the ideas that are going on in my mind and that I'm trying to get a grasp on. I will show you. So even though I'm a professional storyteller, I actually don't tell bedtime stories to my daughter. Here, I must admit, she is only 1.5 years old. And by the time that bedtime comes, she's way too tired to sit through a whole story. She just wants to have a hug and then she falls asleep. But my conundrum remains. I have loved fairy tales since I could remember, and the ones presented to me as a kid tended to end with, and they lived happily ever after. And it is those stories that I'm very hesitant to tell my daughter. Why? Well, such an ending always left me not engaged as a kid. I felt left out some way or the other. I, as the audience, I wasn't part of the story anymore. Not because the story ended, but because the story didn't have a potential to continue. And this is a conundrum that not only I am facing, but also the upcoming scientists to whom I'm offered training in how the art of storytelling, how to make sure that your research story has an impact, how to engage your audience with your story, your research, and yourself. How to make sure that when your talk is over, you leave your audience with a sense of agency, with a sense of wonderment, to let them keep thinking about your research and not directly turn towards practical questions such as, what will I have for dinner tonight? Now, my niece, who is only 4 years old, has a very specific way of retelling stories. To be more accurate, she only retells one story, namely the Disney movie Frozen. But it is rarely the Frozen as I know it, as she doesn't end with happily ever after. Instead, she tells the story up until the point where the problem arises, in this case, the character Elsa accidentally freezing her kingdom, fleeing, and therefore leaving the kingdom in eternal winter. My niece plays out this dramatic running away, and then she launches into either another replay of it, or she makes her own ending, which is rarely a happily ever after. And the most fascinating thing to me is that She doesn't only remember the problem in the story, it is the main focus for her. The story keeps on being engaging to her as she can feel the problem being addressed in the story. She is transported into the story. And narrative transportation, or the absorption or immersion into a narrative world, is a very powerful tool. It was already found about 25 years ago by the social psychologists Melanie Green and Timothy Brock that when people are transported into a story, they're more open to persuasion because their critical defenses are lowered. So when a story resolves easily, too quick, before the problem is actually felt as a problem, the transportation ends, it's over. But my niece's brain is still transported into the story no matter how many times she tells or plays it. She keeps on thinking about it, going back to the point of the highest cognitive tension in the story, at that point, unresolved problem. Now, there is actually a psychological phenomenon termed the Tsai-Karnik effect, after the psychologist Bluma Tsai-Karnik. And this phenomenon refers to the tendency that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks more than completed ones. This study was inspired by an observation that a waiter could remember the restaurant orders that had not yet been paid, but he could not remember the details of the orders once they had been paid. So the waiter remembered the unfinished task, the unpaid orders, but not the completed task, the paid orders. Now, an unfinished task creates a cognitive tension in the brain, a cognitive load that requires mental resources to resolve it. So why does it stay active in our memory? Well, we are goal-orientated creatures. We want to resolve the tension, seek closures. We have a cognitive itch to complete the puzzle that we see and feel. And this cognitive itch to solve the tension for sure explains why I have a tendency to binge watch series and soap operas. Now, another piece of research is important for you to know, the one by neuroscientist Paul Zak. When our brain is in a moment of tension, it releases the hormone cortisol, the stress hormone. It wakes up the brain to pay attention because something important is happening. And when someone listens to a story with suspense in it, with some tension in it, the same hormone is being released. Which means if a story is unresolved, this cortisol-driven tension keeps the audience attentive. Now, in his research, Paul Zak actually explores the impact of stories on the brain, and a lot of his work is done on another hormone, the oxytocin hormone. It's a hormone that is produced when we are trusted or show kindness, and it enhances the sense of empathy that we have. Now, in his group, Paul Zak found that telling a story with an emotional resonance causes a spike in oxytocin in the listener's brain, which led the listeners to be more generous and show empathy. Which means the neurobiology of storytelling shows that a compelling narrative through oxytocin release can have the power to affect our attitudes, our beliefs, and our behaviors. Stories work because they build empathy. The trust chemical lowers your audience defenses against a message they might not want to hear or are uncomfortable to hear, because our brain is wired to respond to narrative. So, according to Paul Zak, without a story, there's no oxytocin, and without oxytocin, there is no emotional investment or action. And to temporarily suspend disbelief, the audience must be fully immersed into the story, feel the reality of it, as mentioned by the narrative transportation theory by Green and Brock. But then, when a story resolves too quickly, the transportation ends and the brain's engagements drop, as explained by the Tsai-Karnik effect. So, in a story in which a problem is solved before it was actually felt by the audience, a closed story, it satisfies our brains, but our brains then lets it go in search for the next story. But my niece's brain kept on being active on that story. And I have a suspicion as to why. Because I think for her, the story was never closed. It was an open-ended story. This may have to do with the fact that her parents often let her watch television before going to bed for about half an hour, and then they stopped the movie. And in the Disney movie Frozen, this 30 minutes coincides with the moment that Elsa flees, the moment where the problem is introduced. So, to be honest, my niece actually rarely has the chance to see the solution and the resolution. Now, in science, we tend to focus on solutions. We deliver conclusions, we close the book on a problem. But is that also the best way to actually communicate science? As actually, as you know, research stories are in full development. Most of the time, the solutions haven't been found yet, for example, in your field of rare diseases, or the results are potentially not as straightforward as you had hoped. But does that mean that those stories cannot be told? Absolutely not. They might be the best ones to tell, as an open-ended story does not leave your audience hanging, but it invites them to help finish the story. Which means I invite you to not see your audience as passive consumers of your information, but instead leave them in a state of high engagement with the emotional drive to act, mentally immerse them, and let their brain actively seek closure. So involve them in the problem. Start the story, but don't close the book. And an open ending in your science story is not a lack of knowledge, it is an invitation to knowledge creation, a shared challenge. So, research isn't only about the stories of the past, research is a tool for the future, an invitation to let the audience feel that and to show that. So I invite you to keep sharing your research stories, even or especially if you don't know the ending yet. Start them, start the story, engage your audience by inviting them into the story, not by directly giving the solution. And I know you want to do that, but invite your audience into the problem, into the open end. So I've decided that tonight I will tell my daughter her first bedtime story and I will let her brain make up the ending.
Wow. Thank you, Hedwig. I really appreciate, yeah, I see some the silent applause emojis, but I think that the applause is loud in all of our heads. Thank you so much for that inspiration. And we're really excited to hear these science stories during this award ceremony. Thank you. Um, we have one additional invited speaker joining us today who also works in science communication. And I'm pleased to introduce Niels Tudor-Vinther. Niels is a communicator and a podcast host dedicated to making the world of EU funding, research management, and innovation more open and accessible through honest conversations. And after years of working across European funding, policy, project management, he created the Grant podcast to give researchers, grant professionals, and innovation actors a space to share knowledge, reflect on practice, and learn from one another. Through interviews, storytelling, and a strong community spirit, Niels helps uncover the people, the pressures, and the hidden work behind proposals, projects, and research support. I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Niels. Over to you.
Thank you, Kate. Now, I'm not gonna be long. I will keep it short, but I will try to share a few reflections with the dear people here that are at this ceremony, and especially with the finalists. So first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you to Scientific Research for having this established this award. It's important, and I'm going to share a small thing from my own personal life. So I was working for more than 20 years in a gardening where I grew up from I was 10 to I left to Belgium in 2010. And the gardener's wife, who was supporting him throughout the full life, she in the mid zeros, she contracted a disease that was indeed a rare disease. And it was so rare that you didn't have medicine for it. The medicine you have would be for other diseases, so it would and it would be very harmful to her body. So they tried all kinds of things with natural solutions, with alternative what to say health support and so on and so forth. And what I can tell you is that to see that person wither away, because that was what happened. Her joints and muscles, they slowly disappeared, so to say. It was painful to watch. And what we talked a lot with with the gardener that I worked with about back then was that how painful it was that there was no, it was a disease with no interest, no real interest from pharmaceutical industries and researchers to engage in, because it was so rare that it would, for researchers, not have an interest research-wise for their career to step into, because nobody would really care much about it. And of course, from the pharmaceutical industry, there would be too little people to earn money on this, or it would be so expensive, the medicine developed, that nobody would be able to afford it. Now, this to frame, this is extremely important. Dear Muhammad, Abdi, Mariam, Bernhard, and Filipe, you are doing something very, very important, because even though these diseases are rare, they have a very, very strong impact on many people's lives throughout the world. And what you are doing, you are folding that out and you're digging into it with all your heart, all your soul, to get that to have solutions for real people. Yeah. Now, when it comes to communication about these things, obviously, when it's a rare disease, there's not so much attention to this. We all know what gets attention. Cancer is the big animal on the savannah, right? But all kinds of other diseases gets a lot of attention because they are diseases that we all can relate to, and because the industry. It's just how it works. Yeah? Now, what you're doing here, it's digging in and folding out, and you take your research and you communicate about it and the importance of finding solutions to these things to change people's lives. 'Cause that's essentially what this is, changing people's lives. So I just wanted to thank you. So nobody, no matter who wins this, you're all winners from my point of view, because you've chosen a path that is just very, very important. It's a path that not so many researchers choose to do. So congratulations with that, and thank you first and foremost. Now, what you're doing, it's not so far away from what I'm doing. So I'm a podcast. I've been working with EU funding for many, many years as a professional, both facilitating access to funding for something that you do, for instance, and I have been also helping on the private side as a consultant, writing proposals and so on. Now, I chose out of heart and out of something else than a strategic choice. I chose to develop a podcast in my spare time. So I can relate in the sense that nobody would have wanted to pay anything for what I did for the last 3-4 years. I've been doing it because I wanted to, out of my initiative, to build something up that I knew would have an importance for many, many people in this community. And that's because one of my drivers has been that I've seen a lot of anxiety and burnouts. It's a very rough sector, the grants consultancy sector. It's a very rough place to be, can be. And a lot of the drive that I have was to have serve information and share reflections and give people a space, give people a voice in my medium where people can share about all the doubts and concerns and all the things that are difficult. So I encourage everyone with an interest in funding to go and check out the podcast. That's now I've been doing it in my spare time. Now I'm building up the company behind that. So but the company doesn't cost a euro cent to listen to. So go and check it out. There's lots of information there, both for the finalists here, if you need funding for your research, but also some of the guest here participants. And I'm not here to sell anything, but the truth is that together with the Scientify research, we have made a collaboration. So I have through the great platform that they have built, I'm offering sessions where I can share with people how to use sound in your science communication, where I share how I work and I can share with you, take you through what elements to use and how it works. And then I offer a session you can book me for on scouting. I've been doing this all my career, scouting for proposals, partners, and coordinators for EU funding, and that's of course something that you are most welcome to take my advice on which tools to use and which paths to take on how to do that. So that's it. Just want to say again, congratulations to the finalists. And again, you're all winners for me, so it's I root for all of you. So good luck with that, and then I hope that all the stories that Hedwig also here she folded out for us, fold them out. Yeah, they are not just beginnings; it's everything will unfold. Yeah? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Niels. And thank you for joining us today and for your support.
You're welcome.
Right. So let's see if I can tell the story of our Science Communication Award. So this is an annual award program that we host at Scientify Research. At Scientify Research, we are a research services company that serves researchers and universities globally. And one thing that we like to do is support the researchers and the research communities. So every year we host a Science Communication Award where we invite researchers to take their peer-reviewed research and translate it into a short essay for non-specialist audiences. This is our goal, and we think this is important for researchers to be able to tell the story of their science. So in this award program, we invite researchers to write these essays, and in the first round, we publish all of the qualified essays that meet the eligibility requirements on our website. And then we engage readership. We want people to read these essays and understand science. Then we invite an academic jury to look at the 10 essays that had the most readership. And the jury makes a decision and determines the top 5 essays that will then move on to a video round. So the 5 speakers that you'll hear from today all submitted videos. They're the 5 finalists for this award program. And we're here today to celebrate their work, celebrate their science stories. And none of this would have been possible without the generous financial support of our financial sponsors, the Karger Foundation and Lipotype. And additionally, I'd also like to thank our academic jury. We had so much fun actually assembling this academic jury this year. Our goal was to have a group that had a wide range of experiences and perspectives from different geographies and understanding of rare disease from different perspectives. And we are so grateful to our 5 jury members, Professor David Pierce, Dr. Alma Cristal Hernandez Mandrango, Dr. Peter Fabian, Vincent Mugwati, and Krishna Chap. Thank you. I think a few of our jury members are here today. A couple of them live in time zones where they might still be sleeping, but they were it was a pleasure to work with all of them. And yeah, I think they had a difficult decision to make this year. So thank you to our jury. And now I'd like to, before we move into the finalist talks, I'd like to invite Judy Milka, the founder of Scientify Research, to share a few words.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hedwig. Thank you, Niels. Thank you so much for your input, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. And of course, congratulations to all the finalists. As Niels said, we believe that you are all winners. Thank you so much for actually having the courage to share your research putting yourself out there. That is really, thank you. Next slide, please, Kate. So some of you may be wondering why, we are a research funding database. And so why do we have a SciComm award? There's many different reasons. I think fundamentally, the most important reason for us as individuals also is that, as you know, many of us have a research background, and we have also worked with researchers for decades. And really what we believe, and we see the work that you guys are doing, research is the foundation of human knowledge. Research is how we learn, how we improve, and how we move society forward. And your work is instrumental to all this. But research has a branding problem. Most people are not familiar with research. They do not know what you guys are doing. And they really actually also don't fully understand the research process. And I'm so glad that the finalists are going to explain the research process and also in a very specific field, rare diseases, is super, super important. So, remember that when it comes to research and what it means, research is not about looking for evidence to prove what we already believe. Research is about looking for evidence to determine what is true. And as one of my professors said, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So I'm so proud again that you guys are here to do the hard work and to help us to communicate what is research, what is science, what is evidence-based research, what is evidence-based society. So without saying too much, and I also want to again thank our sponsors, Cargo Foundation and Lipotype, for making all this happen. And so now I would like to hand over to the finalists and show us that we can move our knowledge forward one step at a time with our evidence-based research.
Thank you, Judy. All right. So it's the moment we've been waiting for. Let's hear from the finalists. We have invited our 5 finalists to give short talks today to share their science stories. Our first finalist today, so 4 of the 5 finalists are here. The first finalist today, we are actually going to share a video of his talk because he is at a training in Barcelona right now at a clinical center, so needs to be there for this work today. So our first finalist, Dr. Filipe Bernardi, conducted research at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil and the University of Porto in Portugal. He is currently a member of the steering committee at the National Institute of Rare Diseases in Brazil and a manager of the Rare Disease Network Project for Portuguese-speaking countries. And the essay that Filipe submitted was From Scattered Files to Shared Knowledge, Brazil's Rare Disease Registry Breakthrough. I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and Adrian from our team is going to share the video from Filipe.
Yes. Imagine a child with a rare disease in Brazil. Her medical story exists, but not in one place. Part of it may be in a hospital record, another part in a spreadsheet, and some information may still be on paper. For her family, this fragmentation is not just an administrative problem. It can mean repeated tests, delayed answers, and missed opportunity for care. Rare diseases are individually rare, but together they affect millions of people. The challenge is that the data needed to understand this disease are often fragmented. Clinicians may use different terms, hospitals may collect information in different ways, researchers may not be able to compare cases, and policymakers may lack the evidence they need to plan services. Hi, my name is Filipe Bernardi, and I worked with the Brazilian Rare Disease Network, called RARAS, to help lay the foundation for Brazil's first National Rare Disease Registry. Our work did not start by simply building a database. It started with governance, deciding together how data should be collected, described, protected, shared, and reused in a safe way. In simple terms, governance means creating shared rules so that hospitals, researchers, patients, and health authorities can work together. We use the FAIR principles. FAIR means that data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. In everyday language, can we find the data? Can we authorize the people access it safely? Can different systems understand each other? And can the data be reused responsibly to improve science and care? This matters deeply in rare disease because every data point is precious. When a condition affects only a small number of people, each well-described case helps reveal patterns that would otherwise remain invisible. This was not only a theoretical model. The RARAS governance model supported data integration across 45 rare disease centers in Brazil. Training initiatives reached 463 participants across 5 Brazilian regions. Using an independent FAIR assessment tool called Fuji, we reached a 50% FAIR score. That score does not mean the work is finished. It shows that we built an important foundation, especially in semantic interoperability, while also identify where you need to improve. For patients and family, better data can mean more coordinated care and fewer repeated tests. For researchers, it means the ability to compare cases, identify patterns, and design better studies. For policymakers, it means planning based on evidence, where services are needed, which gap must be addressed, and how resources can be used well. The next step is to make this system stronger, improving metadata, automating quality checks, and moving to secure federated data sharing. This means that instead of moving sensitive data everywhere, we can ask responsible questions to data and bring back only the answers needed for researchers and decision making. My message is simple. A national rare disease registry is more than a technology project. It's a public health promise. It is a way to turn isolated patient stories into a collective knowledge and collective knowledge into a better care. Let's make every data point count.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Adrian, and thank you, Filipe. I am going to share my screen. Right. So the next finalist that we'll hear from today is Dr. Mohammed Ilyas from Islamia College University, Peshawar, Pakistan. He is a geneticist and genome biologist at the Center for Omic Science, specializing in human genetics, rare neurogenetic disorders, and biomedical informatics, and submitted the essay Whispers of Hidden Suffering in the Mountains of Swat Valley. And I will hand it over to you, Mohammed. I'm going to stop sharing and you can share your slides now.
Thank you, Kat. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hi. So I'll be talking about the background story of the essay that I've submitted in the competition. So the title of the essay was "Whispers of Hidden Suffering in the Mountains of Swat Valley." So this is the capital city of Swat Valley, Mingora, and it is famous for the natural beauty, Buddhist civilization, handicrafts, emeralds, and of course, the Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai was born in this valley. Consanguineous marriages are really common in Pakistan, and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are the northwest areas of Pakistan has a high rate of consanguineous marriages. It's about 70 or 75%. So, due to this consanguineous marriages, the rate of rare diseases or genetic diseases are really high in this population in these areas as well. So the families feel like it's a curse, or maybe it's a punishment, or possibly a punishment, or maybe it's an evil spirit, and they have tried their best, every spiritual remedy they could find, and so one of the family which from where I started my work was my living in my neighborhood. So I met them. I've seen their pan, and I convinced them for the genetic studies. Then we collected their samples. Then we did the genetic analysis, and we got the results. And we found a novel mutation in the GALC, and the paper was published online in Gene and Diseases. It's online now. Later on, more than 300 families were included in this study. We got funding from different institutions, different organizations, and we studied about 300 families, and we find a lot of novel variants, and we are planning to use these variants for the diagnostic studies, or maybe for the personalized medicine in the future. As we all know, science communication is really important for the people. We at least should tell the people, or the patients, the families, that what we are going to do with your DNA, and what would be the benefit of this study we are doing. So everything that I did in my MS, my MPhil, PhD, and currently I'm doing the overall research, I've translated that in Urdu, in the national language, local language, and then it was translated into Pashto, and then in Persian as well. So we regularly distributed these booklets, or these pamphlets, with the families, and they're sometimes really are really convinced with the information that we are sharing with them. So they are really cooperative after that. So these are different activities that we are doing every single year, and I'm really thankful to Scientific Research for providing this platform, for this opportunity. Honestly speaking, this helped me a lot to showcase my studies and my research around the globe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So our next finalist that you'll hear from today is Dr. Abdi Dandena Dibaba from Jimma University in Ethiopia. Abdi is a radiologist at the Faculty of Medical Science, specializing in cardiovascular imaging and congenital heart anomalies. And Abdi submitted the essay, A Hidden Block, How a Rare Heart Malformation Went Undetected for Decades. I will hand it over to you to share your slides.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kate, for the kind introduction. My name is Dr. Abdi. I am a radiologist currently practicing in Tanzania. And the following presentation is based on an interesting case I encountered while I was still practicing in the southern parts of Ethiopia. And it's about a young patient who has been suffering with uncontrolled hypertension for all his life. I hope you'll find the case interesting. Okay, so jumping into our patient story, our patient was a 28-year-old male. He was working as an accountant in a nearby city, and he was diagnosed with resistant hypertension when he was just 14 years of age. And he's been struggling with his hypertension. He's been to multiple hospitals, clinics, traditional healers, and even many religious institutions, but nothing seems to work. And by the time he came to our care, he was on high doses of 3 antihypertensive medication, but his blood pressure was not still in control. So my first introduction to this patient was actually quite routine. He didn't come to our hospital for the hypertension, but he was just in town for a work conference, and he had developed flu-like symptoms. So he came to our hospital with cough, fever, and symptoms of chest discomfort. He was evaluated in our emergency department by our GP, and a chest X-ray was requested to exclude pneumonia. And that's how I got involved in this case. So this was the chest X-ray of our patient. So on the first glance, the X-ray kind of looks okay. We don't see any features of pneumonia. But when we look at the images a bit closer, we see a subtle finding of there are some erosions on the undersurface of the ribs, which are classically described as rib notching, which is a rare radiological sign classically associated with some rare neurologic and vascular disorders. So by this time, we were not aware of the patient's struggle with hypertension, because the chest X-ray request only read out to exclude pneumonia. So that's why we called the patient in and seeked more clinical history, and that's how we came to find out that he's been struggling with hypertension. So once we got that information, we kind of put 2 and 2 together, and we thought that this patient might have a narrowing in his aorta, which is the main blood vessel connecting the heart to the rest of the body. So we informed the patient of our suspicion, and we decided to do a CT angiogram. So this was the CT angiogram of the patient. And what we found was completely shocking to us, because it is something that we've never seen before. Because instead of the narrowing that we suspected, the aorta is completely discontinued at this proximal end. There was about a 2 centimeter gap between the aorta, so the blood supply to the lower part of the body was completely discontinued, and the body has managed to have extensive collateral vessels across the chest wall to bridge this gap. And that's how his lower part of the body was still getting perfused. And this was something we've not seen before. And the diagnosis, as we would later find out, was known as interrupted aortic arch, which is an exceedingly rare malformation where the ascending and the descending thoracic aorta are completely disconnected, leaving no direct blood flow to the lower body. So this is a 1 in a million case and accounts for less than 1% of all congenital heart diseases, and especially interrupted aortic arch, seeing it on an adult patient is exceedingly rare, with a handful of cases ever reported in the literature. And this was the first case published in sub-Saharan Africa. We later published this case in Case Reports of Radiology. This was the case which was published in 2024. And since then, it's been cited 4 times. And I've presented it in a couple of academic conferences. This was me just a few weeks ago presenting it in a conference in Kenya. So for the sake of time, that was our case. Thank you all. Thank you, Scientific Research.
Thank you, Abdi.
Okay.
All right. The next finalist that we'll hear from today is Dr. Mariam Ibrahim, who conducted research at Beirut Arab University in Lebanon and is currently a PhD student at Nicolaus Copernicus University in Poland, specializing in nutriepigenetics with research and submitted the essay From Gene to Vision, Narratives of Sight, Loss, and Hope. And I will hand it over to you, Mariam.
Hello, everyone. This is Mariam Ibrahim. Let me introduce you to. Okay. Can you see my slides?
I see the slide, but it looks empty.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
Let me first introduce you to Mira. Mira is a Lebanese teenager who learned to avoid walking alone at night, not because the streets were dangerous, but because the world looked different to her. For most of us, a street at night may look like this. Lights, faces, sidewalks, everything is sharp and vivid. But for Mira, things started to lose their shapes. Lights blurred into glowing halos and steps became difficult to judge. Familiar places started to feel unsafe. She went to the doctor to get answers. Doctors told her that probably she may need stronger glasses. Stronger glasses didn't help. Over time, her words started to narrow. She started to see as if she's looking through a tunnel, losing the edges of her vision, her vision little by little. Years later, until she finally heard the name of what's going on with her, the diagnosis that explained her symptoms, inherited retinal dystrophies or IRDs. Mira and her family had a lot of questions. What are these IRDs or inherited retinal dystrophies? Inherited retinal dystrophies are a group of rare genetic diseases slowly damaging the light-sensing cells of the retina, leading to progressive, irreversible vision loss. These are caused by faults or variants in genes associated with IRDs, and we have more than 270 genes. Now, why did it take so long for her to get the diagnosis? Unfortunately, in developing countries, access to advanced genetic testing is still limited, and that's why my team and I studies the genetics of inherited retinal dystrophies in Lebanon. In one of our studies, we analyzed 61 Lebanese families. Starting from blood samples, we performed genetic sequencing that allows us to read the patient's DNA, searching for variants or defects in the genes causing IRDs. What we found is that 6 out of these 61 families had variants in one gene, the ABCA4 gene. This gene was reported in Lebanon for the first time. Think about this gene as part of the cleaning system in the retina. Normally, when the cells are in the process of production of vision, the cells produce waste, and this ABCA4 gene, a protein, is part of the cleaning system that helps clear the toxic byproducts away. However, if we have defect or fault in this ABCA4 gene, the protein may lose its function or its function will be impaired, leading to toxic byproducts build up. And this damages the retinal cells and causing their death. Although the 6 families had variants in the same gene, the ABCA4 gene, they developed completely different diseases. 3 families had Retinal dystrophy, 2 families Stargardt disease, and 1 family Conrad dystrophy. Then we have same gene, 6 families, 3 different presentations. Now, why is genetic diagnosis important? Beyond science, accurate diagnosis changes everything. It ends years of uncertainty, helps doctors improve the disease progression, and helps patients understand the future risks for their children that may carry. And most importantly, it connects patients to future gene-specific therapies. Countries like Lebanon, developing countries in general, are still underrepresented in the global genetic databases. This means that our patients are underdiagnosed, underrepresented, and left behind. Our story is a small step toward changing that. A genetic diagnosis may not restore vision, but it can restore something equally powerful: hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you. And the last finalist we'll hear from today is Dr. Bernhard Ransmayr. Bernhard conducted his work at the Medical University of Vienna and St. Anna Children's Cancer Research Institute, and is currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Clinical Pharmacology at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, Germany. Bernhard submitted the essay, The Work of Gene Hunters, How to Identify and Characterize a New Disease. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can see my slide.
Not yet. Let's see. Yes, come. Yes, perfect.
Yeah, it's working? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce the research field of my PhD time, which is gene hunting, the study of rare inborn errors of immunity, in short, IEI. And I would like to start by explaining why we study rare diseases or why one should study them. And here I would like to highlight that even though, thanks to the Human Genome Project, which was a massive collaborative scientific project that led to the first complete sequencing of the human DNA more than 20 years ago, we are still far from understanding what most of our genes are actually doing. And one analogy that I like to use, how we try to change that and understand our genes better, is by imagining you're investigating a device that you're not so familiar with. In my case, that would be like the hood of a car. And one way to understand it is you remove certain parts of it and look at the effect that it has on the device. So, for example, you remove one part and the brakes are not working anymore, or the lights are not switching on. So you get a better understanding for the role of these parts of the car. And a similar approach has been used by scientists for many decades now, where we modify genes in animals, most commonly mice, and look at the phenotypes, or like the summary of symptoms of these mice. Is there a change in behavior, or important in our case, in the immune system? And for humans, we go the other way around. So we look for patients who have an unusual phenotype, typically dysfunction of the immune system. And then we look at the DNA and see if we can find any changes that explain these changes. And this way learn more about the genes involved. And for my PhD project, we studied patients who suffered from recurrent infections since birth. They had a low number of mature B cells and the antibodies that are produced by them. And what was very interesting from the beginning was an absence of tonsils. And tonsils are basically large lymph nodes. And lymph nodes are distributed strategically throughout your body. And when you have an infection, then the nearest lymph node gets activated. It grows in size, which can sometimes be painful. And this is basically a sign that your immune system is preparing to fight the infection. And so we isolated DNA from these patients and sequenced it. And what we found is that all these patients, unlike the healthy family members, shared mutations in a gene called LTBR. And we did a number of investigations on these patients and learned more about the functions of this gene. But the most important one was that we added additional imaging techniques. And this way we found that the patients not only lacked tonsils, but they had no lymph nodes in their entire body. And basically, without this, the immune cells lack the microenvironment to properly mount an immune reaction. And this is the cause for the immune deficiency in these patients and the recurrent infections. And I would like to end by giving more reasons why we study rare diseases. On one hand, as mentioned already by my previous speakers, we are not only finding better treatment options for these patients and their relatives, but we're also in the long term able, with the increased knowledge, to develop therapeutics also for more common diseases such as cancer or autoimmunity. And finally, also, even though inborn errors of immunity are by definition rare, so they affect less than 1 in 2,000 people, often only 1 or 2 people worldwide, there is a huge number of inborn errors of immunity identified so far more than 500, and there's still more to be found, so the story is by far not complete. And but altogether, this combines to a prevalence of that makes inborn errors of immunity as common as 1 in 1,000 or even 1 in 500. And this would put it in the same ballpark as multiple sclerosis or Down syndrome. And yeah, this study was published in Science Immunology is the title if you want to learn more about it. And I thank all the patients that were involved in this study and all the contributors. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernhard. Thank you. I love to see all of the silent applause from everybody. All right. All right. Now the moment, at least our finalists have been waiting for. It's time to determine this year's winners for the Science Communication Award. Each year we choose a different research theme. Last year we worked with people who worked at the intersection of climate and health, and this year we're so pleased to support the rare disease community. Next year we're still deciding what the theme will be, but this year it was just amazing to read all of the research that's being conducted in rare disease. And, you know, as someone who I obviously have never worked in rare disease, it was a true test to actually read those essays and, you know, understand them and understand the research that you're doing. And that's the point of this award program. We really want everyone to understand what researchers are doing. And I think all 5 of our finalists did this incredibly well. So thanks to the support of our financial sponsors, the Carger Foundation and Lipotype, we have 3 awards to give out today. We worked with the academic jury to determine the grand prize winner and the runner-up, and this year we are also holding a People's Choice Award. So it's time for all those who are here today, think about the 5 talks that you just heard, and I am going to put a poll up, and we're going to do this live. And I'm launching the poll for the People's Choice Award. All right, and it's a live vote, and I'm going to give it another minute. So hopefully everybody who's here sees this poll and can see the 5 talks that we heard today. In this poll, they're listed in the order in which the talks were delivered. So if you remember, the first one was the video from Filipe, and then in order of the live talks that you heard today from Mohammed, Abdi, Mariam, and Bernhard. Yes, I see in the chat it was a very difficult choice. Indeed, it is a difficult choice. And that's why I'm actually not going to vote. And this was something we heard from our academic jury as well. One of the comments were, these were all fantastic researchers to hear from. These were, you know, amazing. It's amazing research being done, and yeah, the jury is of course very proud of all of you. So I am going to now end the poll, and let's see who will receive this €500 award. All right. So it looks like the People's Choice Award goes to, looks like, can you see I'm sharing it. Does everyone see it? Yeah, you see it. So the People's Choice Award goes to Mariam Ibrahim. So Mariam, congratulations. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we will, of course, follow up with you after this to talk about or organizing the details for this award. So thank you, everybody, for voting, and congratulations, Mariam. And now I'd like to announce the jury-nominated runner-up. The jury looked at reviewing the essays and then also reviewing the videos, which all 5 of the finalists submitted videos. And based on a number of criteria, but looking at, how well is the science communicated? Could someone understand this research being a non-specialist? Looking at the storytelling aspect of the science. And I am pleased to announce that our jury runner-up this year is Dr. Abdi Dandena Dibaba, who, yes, currently working in Tanzania as a radiologist, conducted the research in Ethiopia. So congratulations to you, Abdi. Congratulations. And yes, I'll be in touch with you to talk about the details. And now it's time to announce our grand prize winner for this 2nd annual Science Communication Award. The jury grand prize this year, the 2,000 euro award, goes to Dr. Muhammad Ilyas. So congratulations to you, and of course, congratulations to all of our finalists. These talks were brilliant, and we are very proud of all of you. And just really thank you to all of our participants. Thank you for sharing your science stories. And may you continue to communicate your science and demonstrate the impact of your work. Congratulations. Thank you again to our academic jury. You had a very difficult job to do, and it was a pleasure to work with all of you. Thank you for your insights and your thoughts and for your time. And of course, thank you to all of our communications partners. In addition to our financial sponsors, we also worked with organizations who supported us with communicating when we announced the award and letting people know about this program. So thank you to the Global Young Academy, to SciSteps, the IRD, IRC, the International Rare Disease Research Consortium, Stem Cell Technologies, the Orphan Disease Center, and the Cambridge Rare Disease Network. Thank you all for supporting us with communicating and sharing about this award program. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Yeah, and thank you from the Scientify research team. We are very proud of all of you, and thank you for joining. Yes. Thank you. Wishing everyone a wonderful evening or day, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us from across many time zones, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, everybody.